napapansin sa iyong mga kapaligiran.
But more important, 70% of Indians are farmers. Only 10% of the suicides are among farmers. Most of the suicides are in cities, where there's more stress, of course. Out on the farm, it's not so stressful. And most important, India has a lower suicide rate than the United States. Look at Philippines. You have even lower than India. These are the lowest in the blue. You have the lowest suicide rate in the world compared to just a few other countries. And this kind of evil person who uses his anti-corporate, anti-GMO, anti-golden rice message to drive people to his hundreds of websites which sell fake remedies for people who are sick. Total fake. Like, that's true snake oil salesman. He lives in Ecuador to avoid being extradited by the United States. He makes multi-million dollars. And he says, this is his website. He denied it at first, but they found his fingerprints for sure on the internet. To make this website with Monsanto swastika saying these people should be killed. They should be killed. And these are people I know. He should pop off on John Stossel. He's a famous TV reporter in the United States who agrees with GMO and biotech. So this is the kind of people we are against. They are evil people who use golden rice as a way of making money and a way of promoting a far-left agenda and fake sales of things. This is, I'm almost at the end. Tony Alfonso is the chief scientist at the Philippines Rice Research Institute. Here he holds up enough rice here to save a child from death and blindness. If they just eat this, they will never have any problem with vitamin A deficiency. There could be other health issues, but not vitamin A deficiency, which is the biggest killer of children in the world today, more than HIV/AIDS, more than tuberculosis, more than malaria. Those are bad too, but this is the worst one. And this is not a disease. It is only a nutritional deficiency. Thankfully, because of our work in Germany and the help from our German compatriots in our campaign, who are all senior people in their country, sending the message out now, young people in Germany now are 2/3 support for golden rice, even though GMOs are banned in Germany. Even when they are told it's a genetically modified plant, the young people see the message. Of course, when you learn this story, it's pretty hard to be against golden rice if it can save 2 million children. Greenpeace says golden rice is a Trojan horse for GMO. And so I'm going, Trojan horse. Who was winning that battle? The guys in the horse, right? They won. So I'm going to take Tony and me, get in the horse. We will be a Trojan horse, if that's what they say. Because golden rice is a good thing, and golden rice should win the battle against the anti-GMO and Greenpeace. So all of us are going in the horse. We invite you to come in with us and help bring golden rice for the children. Here's our campaign in first demonstration against Greenpeace Boat Rainbow Warrior. That's me, that's my son John, my wife Eileen who is here, our friend Sheila, my daughter-in-law, and my nephew. So it started with a family organization and spread to an international campaign. Here I am with the inventor of golden rice, Dr. Ingo Potrykus, at the Greenpeace Hamburg office in Germany, protesting against Greenpeace there. We made lots of national television and big news in Germany, which had never heard about this side before, because we are the only campaign for golden rice. But Greenpeace and its friends are hundreds of organizations, big and small, all against it. Whereas the scientists, like Ingo Potrykus, he's a scientist, he's not a campaigner. So I was able, because I've been a campaigner, I was 15 years with Greenpeace, but I left almost 30 years ago because of things like this kind of direction, which they are taking, which is anti-human, anti-science, and anti-logic. And here, my brother Michael, it's so sad, he's become very ill. He was on all the campaigns in Europe, and he was my right-hand man in communications, computers, etc. But he could not come with us on this trip, and that is why I recruited Paul Evans from Australia, who is here to take his place. And Paul is doing an excellent job of helping us organize our communications. And here we are in Rome, Italy, on the campaign in Europe. This is Klaus Amann, also one of the key figures in creating this campaign. He's a Swiss scientist in molecular biology and stuff. And here is the Pope blessing golden rice with Dr. Ingo Kotricus in the Vatican, and this is his words, "Now it is blessed." So the Pontifical Academy of Science, which is the Vatican's science wing, not too many churches have a science wing, but the Catholic Church does, and they understand what golden rice is. And also the Catholic Church, because they are in many countries with poor people in South America, Central America, and Asia, this Pope understands how important golden rice is for the children. And as I said, that's a short version of what would normally be a 30-minute presentation, but thank you very much for listening, and I'll enjoy your questions.
We will have to reiterate our earlier announcements. Number one, the officers of the PNPA Alumni Association, which is sponsoring this sympathy march, Truth and Justice for SAP 44 tomorrow. This is going to be held at the Camp Crame, and then they're going to march to Quezon Memorial Circle. And earlier, and we'll have to go back to our question and answer to Senator Pimentel, because he made a very, very interesting and, of course, exhaustive presentation about federalizing the Philippines as a solution to the ongoing problems that we now have in Muslim Mindanao, and of course, Dr. Moore. So, and of course, Dr. Abet Irijan is there of the Sultanate of Sulu. So,
why is Greenpeace opposed to GMOs? Not only golden rice, but all GMO crops.
It's a very difficult thing to understand why anybody would be against something that every science organization says is safe and is an improvement in agriculture and nutrition. So it's almost like they have some kind of religion which they can't even think logical about it. The other thing, though, is they are making a lot of money from this, and they have a strong political agenda which is so far to the left. They have other campaigns. For example, they say we should end the use of fossil fuels. That's their position. Yet they are flying around in jet planes to climate change meetings all over the world all the time and telling us we should stop using oil. So it's total hypocrisy, which is no shortage of that in the world today, of course. But I think they are using GMOs as a front for fundraising and political agenda. I can't see any other explanation because it's so obvious that it's a good thing. The government of the Philippines thinks it's a good thing. A scientist at International Race Research thinks it's a good thing. Bill Gates of Microsoft thinks it's a good thing. He's not a stupid man. And all these other organizations, humanitarians, think it's a good thing. And yet Greenpeace continues to be against it and to tell lies about it.
Do you have any idea as to its motive? It must have a motive.
I always say when people ask about motive, I can't see in someone else's head. Because some of them probably think they're doing the right thing. I can't believe the leaders who might care about 2 million children dying and say, no, you can't have this, even though it's proven it will fix them. How can anybody be that heartless and cruel? But you know what the other problem is? They think there's too many people in the world. They say this all the time. And so maybe they think it's good that children are dying and there's not so many people. Because they have this idea that human beings are the enemies of nature, that humans are the enemies of planet Earth, as if we came from Mars or something attacking the planet. We are part of the life of this planet. We are evolved from the rest of life too. We are all one ecosystem, which is the first rule of ecology, which I have a PhD in ecology and also a Bachelor of Science in biology. So I understand the genetics and the issues around this very clearly. And yet they are purely political, and they go to the courts. You know, where you have a judge in the Philippines who maybe doesn't have much biology, or maybe doesn't have much agriculture knowledge, and he decided on the BT Talon case that it was not right to take food away from the worm and give it to the people by having a insect-resistant BT Talon, which will make it so the farmers don't have to spray poison. Sometimes 115 times during one crop cycle, they spray poison to kill this worm. If they have BT talon, they won't need to use the poison anymore because the plant will be immune to the worm. But the judge said, no, that's not right, because you're taking food away from the worm and giving it to the people, as if the farmer's job is to grow food for worms. You know, what I say, just a joke, if the judge was a worm, I could understand he could make this decision in favor of the worms. But the judge is a people, and so he should make a decision for the farmer and for the people who need to eat, instead of making a decision for the worm. And this is going to the Supreme Court with the support of many of the farmers in Philippines, and hopefully, is it 14 members, your Supreme Court? So many? 15. I thought it had to be an odd number. That's many. But hopefully 15 wise judges on the Supreme Court will realize that if you have a decision saying it's okay to let the insects eat all the food, that's not very good for your agricultural future. So maybe they will see the reason in this, and you will have a better decision that will allow the BT talon to go forward. Already Bangladesh has approved BT talon for commercial growing by farmers, and Philippines is behind. Bangladesh is now the leader in South Asia in biotech agriculture going forward with their BT talon. First vegetable, biotech vegetable to be approved for agriculture in Asia.
Some say that GMOs will reduce the use of pesticides, and therefore the pesticide companies are secretly funding Greenpeace.
I don't believe that's the case. It may be that some pesticide companies are against the insect-resistant GMOs, because the insect-resistant GMOs like BT cotton in India result in a double production, but less pesticide use, which is good for society, good for the environment, good for the farm workers who don't have so much spray when they're going out on the fields. The insecticides are the most poisonous of all the pesticides. Herbicides are generally not poisonous to people, but often insecticides are poisonous to people. And so farmers in the Philippines growing the BT maize are using way less insecticide now than they used to use, and are having increased productivity of their corn. It's better, it's healthier corn, because it hasn't got this insect inside it. So it's so obvious what the right solution is, and these people have to have a motive other than good. Their motive is not a moral motive. That's what I say, it's an immoral campaign to fight against golden rice.
Federalism is getting crushed. Our mutual friend, Dr. Elfman Cruz, wrote about it. I pass it around. And I'd like to know, in preparation for 2016, when Mayor Duterte is going around now promoting your brainchild, federal form of government, what are the chances of federalism getting bigger and bigger in terms of acceptance?
Well, obviously, since people are not only talking about federalism and writing about it, I suppose that more and more people will now get an idea what the proposal is all about and how, more importantly, it will help, alleviate the condition of life for the rest of our country. Because ultimately, that is the objective of any attempt to change the form of government that we have. Sure.
Thank you.
Give me a statement regarding the Bangsamoro Basic Law, Senator. And Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago said the solution to the passage of any amendments to the 16th Organic Act for Muslim Mindanao is to go back to the negotiating table. Do you believe that's
Jonah, any attempt to change the Bangsamoro Basic Law should be with the conformity of the parties with whom our negotiators had come to an agreement. And therefore, it is important that we call upon them to understand that even in my case, for example, I am very much supportive of the effort at searching for peace in parts of Mindanao and for the rest of the country. I advocate that we must change the Bangsamoro Basic Law because it does not conform to the Constitution. I mean, it is not just any attempt at arriving at peace that is all right, but only attempts that are attuned with the Constitution, which means you either change the Bangsamoro Basic Law, which is easier to do, than amend the Constitution, which is a lot more difficult to do because it will involve ratification by the rest of the country.
We all know that many politicians are warlords. Even now, we have a national government. There are provinces ruled by warlords. So if we federalize the government, these warlords will convert their provinces into their own private fiefdom. They will be able to build up their army. And then what about this problem also exists in the United States, where different federal states have different laws. So that a crime in one state is not a crime in another state. So what the criminals do is cross the border, and then they're safe from arrest and prosecution.
Neil, just because we are federalizing the country does not mean that the laws of the land will therefore be shunted aside. To begin with, there shall be only one constitution. Unlike in the U.S., where federal states have their own constitution, in our proposal, only one constitution will govern fundamentally whatever is done in the rest of the country, even as we are divided into federal states. Secondly, the powers that will be devolved to, let us say, the federal states will have to be defined, not only by future legislation, but in the act federalizing the Philippines, so that from the very beginning, people in the federal states will understand, this is the extent of what we can do, and we cannot do any further because that would be in violation of the Constitution. So, in sum, Neil, you yourself admit that even now warlords are, lording it over our people, and therefore we should not allow that to just stay as it is. We should try to do something about it, and precisely because by bringing the power of the government closer to the people, I suppose the people will now have more right and more, leeway to demand that the rule of law should prevail in their own localities. It will take a long time, Neil. And besides, let me just put this idea that federalizing the Philippines does not mean bringing paradise into the country. No. Nobody gives paradise to people. Even Adam and Eve refused the paradise that were given to them. Therefore, if we have to have paradise in our federal states, we must all work for it.
This portion is brought to you by
Ultra Pure Water Purifier. Samantala sa inyong lahat na gusto ng malinis na tubig, direkta sa inyong mga gripo, narito na ang Ultra Pure Water Purifier. Matipid na, garantisadong malinis na tubig ang hatid pa.
You suggested that part of the federal system should be SAPA.
Yes.
How should we pursue our claim to SAPA in peaceful ways? What should be the process?
We should assert our claim to SAPA based on the evidence that we have at hand. And what is this evidence? Very briefly, the Sultan of Sulu has in his possession the document given in the 13th century by the Sultan of Brunei, 17th century, by the Sultan of Brunei, who the Sultan of Sulu assisted to repel his enemies. And this is written down. And when the Americans came to our country, the Sultan of Sulu already revealed that there was such an agreement. And therefore, when our new constitution was adopted in 1999, not new constitution, the 1935 constitution was adopted, the Sultanate of Sulu was included as a part of the Republic, but it did not, however, because of American policy of not antagonizing the other regional powers like Malaysia and all that, they did not insist on saying that parts of Mindanao, which were given by the or Sabah, which was given by the Sultan of Brunei to the Sultan of Sulu, should be included as a defined territory of the Republic of the Philippines. And therefore, they just kept quiet about it. Now, if you will remember, during the, even before the administration of President Marcos, panahon pa rin makakali, the heirs of the Sultan of Sulu sort of forwarded their claim to the government for the government to assert. This is now addressing your question. How do we do that? Through the auspices, basically, of the United Nations, because there are agencies in the United Nations that are empowered precisely to settle conflicts of claims between states. And in this case, if we assert the claim of over Sabah, that means that Malaysia would be probably would consider it as would consider it adversely, and therefore, to prevent our going into violence over that issue, we are suggesting that the UN should come in. Now, if the UN would hesitate to come in, let us take it up in APEC. If APEC is hesitant to take it up, let's take it up in ASEAN. In other words, there are many avenues where the possibility of peaceful settlement exists. And please know that Sabah is only 217.9 miles from Bonggao to Witawi. Sabah is ours. And it's so far away from Malaysia, in effect, that's what I'm saying. And there are, as of now, an estimated of 1.5 Filipinos in Sabah. The children, many children of Filipino parentage in Sabah are not going to school because Malaysia provides free education only to citizens of Malaysia. So you see how important this thing is for us to come to a definitive conclusion, hopefully peacefully, through the auspices again of United Nations facilities.
My question is, it seems that the present administration is very much inclined for the approval of the BBM, and it has set a timeline for Congress to be in June. What will be your reaction if ever this law is passed?
My reaction is that the Bangsamoro Basic Law, since it is a thrust for peace, should be supported, but only if it is in accord with the Constitution. Meaning to say, remove the objectionable features of that proposal, which are essentially, one, the provision that says that the government that will be put in the Bangsamoro entity by the Bangsamoro Basic Law is one that is parliamentary in form. Even that alone is already objectionable because the Philippines is a presidential form of government, and it would, to say the least, it would be awkward to have a presidential form of government have a part that is parliamentary, to say the least. And maybe that is the reason why the negotiators put the introductory clause to the Bangsamoro Basic Law that it was an asymmetric relationship of government that is being put in the Bangsamoro. As if, by putting the words asymmetric, that will already excuse its contradiction against the Constitution. That cannot be done, because the Constitution requires that the government of Sabah the government of Bangsamoro must be elected by the people, not only the members of the legislature, but the executive also. But under the Bangsamoro law, they will only elect the members of the legislature, and the members will elect the executive officials. That is against our constitution.
Can we expect you, sir, to spearhead the move to question its constitutionality, just in case they will pass the law?
Actually, the Senate Committee of Bongbong Marcos, local government, and Miriam invited me to give my input before the committee, and I did. And I suppose that they are poised to challenge the constitutionality of Bangsamoro.
This portion is brought to you by
Elmost Whitening Soap. Narito na sa gustong pumuti at gumanda. Ito ang kasagutan sa problema mo, kapatid. Elmost Whitening Soap sa murang halaga, kutis artista ka na.
Considering mo na by 2016 ay election na. So, by 2016 election na. So, meron mo ba kayong timeline dito sa federalism?
The adoption of the federal system for our country will involve amending the constitution, revising it. That's a long process. Hindi kaya within the last several days left of this administration.
I was informed that the Sultanate of Sulu already sent a letter to the United Nations. And the United Nations has already responded that if we want to continue our claim for Sabah, is we have to have a sovereign government which will sponsor it. So I'm just wondering if the Philippine government, through the initiative of our legislation, can come up with or enact a law in order to support the claim of Sabah through the particular letter that the United Nations has given to the Sultanate of Sulu. Is it possible through enactment?
What we have done so far is to, in our case, is to file a resolution in the House of Representatives for the Philippine government to pursue this claim. So that is as far as we have done so far.
Is it already on table or an agenda that within the close of the presidential term of President Aquino that such an enactment can be passed by Congress?
It is on the table in the House. In the Senate, I understand Senator Marcos is also tabling such a resolution. So I hope we will get as many supporters as possible so that we can put this on the record. If the executive, meaning the President, will not work on this during his term, what we can do is, as Senator Pimentel knows, we can put on record the sense of Congress.
How is the response from other honorable people in Congress?
They are very enthusiastic about this because there is really, this is a lingering issue and it is an issue that needs to have some final solution.
Yeah, because the response of the President of the Republic, it was rather lukewarm when the royal forces of the Sultanate of Sulu were right there in Sabah making a visit to their land. There was no even a diplomatic action by the Philippine government. So I'm just wondering if the executive branch will not block this particular move by our lawmakers to come up with a law which will support the claim of the Sultanate of Sulu that they have already written the United Nations and the United States. If there is a sponsor of a sovereign government, then we can listen to what you're seeking. So is this still possible?
One of the big problems that we have here about moving forward the Bangsamoro Basic Law is the fact that Malaysia is the negotiator. How can a negotiator who is partial to their own interests? Why do I say that? Because Malaysia wants to be able to exploit, not only the Mindanao, but there's a marshland, Iguasan Marsh, They want to exploit that, get the concession or oil or whatever gas, etc. And for a time, Malaysia was a supplier of arms for the MILF. You see, the better negotiator would really be Indonesia, because Indonesia had always been, neutral in the matter of rebellion being waged by our Muslim brothers in Mindanao. So I'm saying that probably that's one of the reasons why Noynoy is hesitant to push, strongly the BBL, because he does not want to offend Malaysia.
Senator, do you think the Filipino people will rally behind the truth? That our Philippine government is rather very wishy-washy, and it has been proven that it is pro-Malaysia. As a matter of fact, Iqbal mentioned publicly that the recommendation has to be submitted to Malaysia. And that Malaysia will inform the Philippine government of the report. Why is this so? I mean, how about our Congress, which is probably the last hope of our fatherland, to move and tell the Filipino people what is really the truth? Go out to the streets, because we elected our House of Representatives. But it seems that there is something probably blocking their mouths to open. Is there such a thing going on in Congress? Now, do we have the truth from the father of the local autonomous code, who is a proponent of this federalism and all of these LGUs being progressive nowadays? There is a truth, my friends, in the media. What is our move now, so that at least the people will know what is really the truth, and also the aspirations of our brothers, the people in Sulu. Thank you.
Just because federalism is being proposed at this point in our life as a nation, it does not mean that it will automatically be the battle cry of the rest of the members of the Senate and of the House. For the reason that they themselves have to understand what is this all about. They don't know yet. Now, also, if you ask in the final analysis, who put them there? The people. Do the people understand what the federalism is all about? It will take time. And that is the, I think, ultimate reason why, even at this point, aside from the other complications that we have already pointed out, why President Noynoy may not be the president who can bring this about. It will have to be the next, the incoming administration. We should start this process from day one. Not wait until 1 year later, 1 year to go in your presidency before you can move it. No, you cannot, because you have to amend the Constitution, and that takes a lot of time.
And why is the MILF submitting its report on the Masapanong massacre to Malaysia and not to the Philippine government?
Exactly. And that is one of the things that I do not subscribe to, because this is an internal problem of the country. We should solve it. But where was it signed? In Kuala Lumpur. And when it was signed, there were, already firings and encounters in Sulu, which are a sign that the people there themselves do not want it. The Sultan of Sulu is a friend of mine, Neil, and I talked with him. And among other things, he told me that he found it, unacceptable, the Bangsamoro Basic Law, because it would intrude into his domain in the Sulu Sea for his people, which has been traditionally a part of their culture and tradition. And these are nuances of, the opposition, which should be looked into. And among other things, the Sultan of Sulu told me, I don't want this Bangsamoro Basic Law because it wants to call the Sulu Sea Bangsamoro Sea. He says, the word Moro is an appropriate to us, because that connotes a warlike people, uncivilized, and put down on the name, the good name really of the Moro, of the Muslim people. Therefore, there are many other things that need to be addressed. So, I would like to repeat, there is no easy solution that can be, put forward by this present administration. But hopefully, the next one will give us a chance to do so right from day one. And I would like to appeal to all of you that in the process, let us also conscientize our members of Congress and of the Senate so that they will know that these are issues that are fundamental to the search for peace in Mindanao.
Let me just be very, very candid about the situation. Number one, in the case of the Mama Sapano massacre, we have gained ground, meaning I belong to the minority in Congress. We are only about 27 members of the minority. That includes also the Makabayan. Now, there are about 80 members of Congress who have indicated their interest and desire that the hearing in Congress continue on the Mama Sapano. In other words, we are saying that this particular development that happened in Mama Sapano, the massacre that happened in Mama Sapano, is not just closed as far as we are concerned. Because we have a lot of questions. And the basic questions remain the original sin. Number one, the original sin is why did this MILF and its adjuncts allow Marwan and the other terrorists to stay in their communities for a long, long time. For a long, long time. Under the ceasefire agreement that we have with the MILF, they are supposed to surrender. They are supposed to turn over these criminals to the Philippine government. As a matter of course, you don't have to have any other permit. They are supposed to do that. That is the original thing. Number two, the basic question that we ask, and it is still being asked, is what did all of these officials know, from the president down? What did they know? When did they know this information, and what did they do with the information? That is the basic question. Up to now, this has not yet been answered because they are coming out with all kinds of information. And the narratives that they are coming out under oath, the narratives that they are coming out with under oath are conflicting and contradictory. So we have a lot of problems in the House right now. Number two, insofar as the claims of the Sultanate of Sulu, as I said, we have filed a resolution to that effect. And Dato' Abet knows this in the Committee on Foreign Affairs. So we are following this up. And in the case of the BBL, there are more questions than answers as far as the BBL is concerned. And therefore, this will take longer than is scheduled because they are trying to schedule a June 11 deadline. We cannot accept that particular kind of deadline because there are a lot of issues that have to be answered as far as this is concerned. And the basic issue that has to be answered is number one. They are saying that the Organic Act right now, the Autonomous Region for Muslim Mindanao, is a failed experiment. So we want them to explain why they are saying that it is a failed experiment. Because up to now, they have not come out with any explanation. How can they say that it is a failed experiment? It has been there since 1996, I think. 87, we have the Organic Act, we have been amended, we have had two internationally recognized agreements, the Tripoli Agreement and the Jakarta Accord. We have these agreements right now. So how can they say that it's a failed experiment? And we've been pouring money into the Muslim areas. So they cannot explain all of this. They have not explained all of these things, and they are trying to put this under the rug, and they are trying to come out with this new program about the Bangsamoro Basic Law. So there are a lot of issues that still have to be answered. And we will continue to work this out. And it is good that Senator Pimentel has come out regarding this issue of federalism, because if it cannot be worked out within this administration, what we will do is we will have to put this as one of the main issues in the presidential elections of 2016. We have to do this now, and it is not too late for us to do this. Napaka-importante po dito. It's not too late for us to do this and come out with this kind of issues, especially since we are trying to find, as Senator Pimentel mentioned, the final solution to our problems in Mindanao and in the country.
It seems that the President and the government representatives in the peace panel. I'm afraid of the MILF threat to go back to war if the BBL is not passed. What does Congress think about that?
Well, we have already explained this to our negotiators. We have also told Mr. Iqbal as well as the MILF, as well as the other members of the panel, that we cannot accept that kind of an arrangement. If they believe that they cannot work with a modified BBL, Bangsamoro Basic Law, because there are a lot of modifications, there are a lot of revisions as far as this law is concerned, then so be it. Because we cannot allow them to do that. We cannot allow them to impose this kind of conditionalities on Congress. As Senator Pimentel mentioned, we have only one government, we have only one constitution. If we are going to have any law, that has to be in conformity with the constitution.
But you can ask questions directly from our major officers later. But on that note, we'd like to thank you for coming, and we'll see you next Saturday.
We have to thank Senator Pimentel, Dato Abet, Johnny, and of course Dr. Moore and the group. Thank you very much.
Galaw-gaw, kay harot-harot tingnan, maliksi, di mapigil ang gaslaw. Galaw-gaw, ang lahat ginagalaw, napakaharot at pakialam. Galaw-gaw, kung tawagin siya'y ganyan, kang karot, na trumpong tumatanang. Galaw-gaw, nakalilitong masdan, at haliparot kahit saan. Kung kumilos, di maingat, dalos-dalos kay dula.